On a wintry night, I had just finished a drop-off in Nebraska and was heading home to Minnesota. I was hoping to be back in the morning, but the snow was beginning to accumulate on the road in drifts. The weather radio wasn't giving any hope for the rest of the night either. Blizzard conditions and whiteouts were forecasted, and cars were already off the road in many places. The road had an icy coat under the blowing snow. It was irrational to continue under such conditions. South Dakota highways in winter can be treacherous, and I was on a long, lonely stretch through the vast prairie. I thought to find a service center and hole up for the night in a sleeper. GPS showed a truck stop 20 miles ahead, so I pushed for it. But I had yet to go much further before the lights on my dash lit up, indicating engine trouble. I headed the truck onto a siding that at least got me off the road. I was concerned a plow truck would not see me in the blizzard and collide with the rear end of my rig. This gave me a little comfort. I'm a seasoned veteran of the highway. I've been hauling since I was in my early 20s, and I'm 37 now. For such emergencies, I always packed a supply of extra food and water and had a warm blanket. Outside it was blasting hail like missiles at the truck. Each one struck with a metallic sound. I turned on the CB radio to hear what other truckers said about the storm ahead, but nothing but static. So, I went out into the storm to evaluate the problem. Getting the hood open was a chore with the snow and ice accumulation on it. Instantly, I saw the problem. The fan belt had torn and ripped away. The only thing to do was call for a tow truck on this miserable night. The cab was quickly cold without the engine running, and I wrapped in the blanket, waiting for the tow truck, which could be hours on a night such as this. Then the CB crackled again with static, but underneath the static was a voice laughing. That was spooky, I thought, and I looked out through the ice-glazed windshield, and there stood a man in the blizzard holding a walkie-talkie. I opened my cab door enough to stick my head out and shout into the storm, "You okay?" But the man gave no response. The CB cracked again, and I could very clearly this time hear the man laughing in this demonic way. He was staring straight at me and laughing like Satan himself. I realized at that moment this wasn't a normal guy stuck out in the blizzard, but some crazy lunatic, and that my life was in danger. Panic set in as I knew there was no escaping this demon, only to barricade myself in the cab and hope the tow truck would arrive soon to provide some backup. From the toolkit in the back of the cab, I grabbed a large wrench for self-defense, but I didn't know what help it would be if the guy had a gun. The manic voice kept laughing on the CB radio, as he knew he had me trapped. Then he disappeared, and the laughing stopped. A few minutes passed, and I began to be relieved. I sat in the driver's seat looking out the front windshield when I heard a tapping on my side glass. And there he was with his face pressed against the ice snow. I could hear that he was trying to open my locked door. I clenched the wrench, preparing myself mentally for the fight of my life. The face disappeared, and minutes passed. Then a loud bang, bang, bang of something heavy striking the passenger side door. I feared the door lock would soon give way or the glass would shatter. A second later, bright beams emerged from the darkness as the tow truck pulled behind. The crazy vanished with the yellow flashers now behind me. I exited the cab, still clenching the wrench, and was greeted by the tow driver. I was relieved beyond words. We got the truck off the highway that night, and I thanked the tow driver and warned him about the man who had attacked my truck. They would have said I was hallucinating if they hadn't seen the side door pounded with what looked like a rock. That tow truck arriving when it did saved my life that night. The repair shop said that the door lock was just a blow away from breaking, and whoever it was would have entered the cab. It was the most chilling nightmare of my life, and if that tow service hadn't answered my call, there's a good chance I wouldn't be alive to recount this story. This trucker story happened about 3 years ago. I was on a run carrying roofing, lumber, and pre-packed boxes for a contractor. It was an open load that required a tarp with straps. This run was between Hendersonville and Forest City, a rural route in North Carolina. Everything was strapped down securely at the supply depot. Still, as I got out into the country into the middle of nowhere, I noticed my cover flapping in the wind. It was the middle of the woods on a 2-lane state route. I slowed and found a wide shoulder to pull over to secure my load. When I analyzed the straps, I saw that I did a relatively poor job back at the depot, and decided I should redo it when no one was aware, more to save face than for the security of the load. We truckers take pride in our service. I undid all the straps and dragged the tarp off. Alongside the road, I re-rolled the tarp and climbed back up on the trailer to unroll it atop the load. As I began unrolling the tarp, I saw a man appear from the woods and start walking down the road toward my truck. There was something weird about him, and I was in the middle of nowhere, so I kept my eye on him as I worked. After I unrolled the tarp, I climbed down to re-strap the load. The weirdo was much closer. I'm now paying more attention to his presence on the road than topping my load. Out of caution, I set the winch bar on the trailer within arm's reach, just in case this unkempt person tried anything. As he nears, I see he has a dirty mullet, as if he has been sleeping on it in the woods for several weeks, but it was his eyes that rattled me the most. They were clear, so he didn't look drunk or high on anything. They just looked like he wasn't clearly thinking. Additionally, his clothes were as dirty as his mullet, and his shoes weren't laced. He gave the impression that he had been wandering in the woods for several weeks. The winch bar was within easy reach as I continued strapping down the tarp. This guy walks up to the truck and stands while I'm working until I look up at him. He said,
"I've got a long walk."
I acknowledged this and clarified that I could not take any passengers. He nodded and started to move on, but as he got to the front of the truck, he turned and walked back to me and once again said,
"I've got a long walk."
I apologized and said that my transport service forbids carrying passengers. He continued his shuffling walk, and I watched him as I tied off the last tarp. Just as I finished, he's heading back towards the truck again. He has his hand to his ear and is talking on his cell phone rather loudly, but I can't determine what he is saying. I make a last check of the load, climb into the cab, and place the winch bar next to me, locking the door as a precaution. The guy now next to the cab is having an animated conversation, waving one hand in the air and the other to his ear. At that moment, I could see that he was talking only to his hand. There was no cell phone to his ear. What disturbed me most was that he was having a furious conversation with his hand. I put the truck into gear to enter the road. He looked and held me in a dead cold glare. His eyes were lifeless and piercing. When I looked in the mirror after entering the road, he had disappeared, and all that remained was my chilling nightmare. A few years back, I operated a hotshot delivery business. I was my own owner-operator with a Class 5 medium-duty Kenworth. So, I could carry more significant specialty needs, or even machines for manufacturers who couldn't afford to be without an operation for even a day. These are always rush jobs and very demanding on a driver, but the pay is excellent. One night, I was driving a critical load for a manufacturer who needed it in Montana by morning. It was after midnight, and I was hauling through North Dakota from Minnesota. The manufacturer was desperately waiting for this machine because the entire operation at their plant in Montana was at a standstill without it. The pressure was on, but I thrived on such jobs. I was pushing the speed limits as best I could and staying legal to meet the obligation I had accepted and told them I could do. At this late hour of monotonous North Dakota, I felt some highway hypnosis creeping up on me. I wasn't too concerned, as I've made hundreds of late-night deliveries. I'm an over-the-road trucker with lots of experience under my belt. I've been operating a truck for nearly 2 decades. If you have driven across North Dakota, you know how extremely straight and flat this state is. It is desolate for miles with hardly a farmhouse, and service centers are spread well apart. With the high beams on this rig, I can see things on the road in advance, giving me an extra margin of safety, even on moonless nights like this. And this night, I noticed something on the road stretching across my lane a quarter mile ahead. I slowed down and moved to the oncoming lane to avoid it. There wasn't any traffic this time of night, so not a problem. It looked like a tire tread that had ripped off an 18-wheeler. But as I approached to pass, I could see 2 people lying across the lane. I urgently applied the brakes, making a tremendous sound of squealing air brakes coming to a complete stop. The 2 people lying across the road didn't move, but remained as if dead. Their bodies appeared lifeless in my headbeams. I was sure I had just encountered 2 dead bodies on this remote stretch of highway. I flipped on my hazards and unclipped my safety belt, and as I did, an old story popped into my mind. I had heard it a decade ago, but the old man who told me the story was still vivid in my mind. He had warned me about people lying down the road in a desolate area, and waiting for a good Samaritan to stop. Then other accomplices would jump out of hiding and mug you, stealing your car or truck, and leaving you half dead along a remote stretch of road, to die in the cold. I decided it was wiser to drive on a short way and call the police. As soon as I was past them, I saw them get up in the passing of my taillights and stand in the road now behind me. I didn't stop, but kept driving and called the highway patrol. I crossed myself and quietly thanked the old trucker with a prayer. I escaped this chilling nightmare with my life.